Thank you, Ariana, and welcome to everyone. So today I'm quite excited because we have hosting the second webinar of 2025 of a series of the Global Webinar Series that is organized by the International Trade Center, the International Coffee Organization, and the Center for Circular Economy in Coffee. So today the topic is packaging, and it's mainly about circularity in coffee packaging. So we are happy and honored to have here in as a panelist, very expert of the sector. So we have Eileen Gordon from the European Coffee Federation, Graham Houlder from CEFLEX, a circular economy for flexible packaging, and Hanuman Jain, founder and CEO of Ecotact. And then the panel will moderate by Frederic Couty from the International Trade Center. So the webinar series is explore the transformative potential of a circular economy in coffee, building from the joint International Coffee Organization Coffee Development Report entitled Beyond Coffee Towards a Coffee Circular Economy. It also highlights findings and experiences from the multi-stakeholder circular economy working group, part of the International Trade Center's Coffee Guide Networks and the Center for Circular Economy in Coffee members. So the Center for Circular Economy in Coffee, just few words, is a pre-competitive initiative that is hosting and then working together with ITC and ICO for organizing the webinar series. It's a pre-competitive platform that aims to enhance the circular economy in the coffee sector. And it's moved by three main objectives. So the first one is to promote circular economy, culture, and knowledge. And it's a very important aspect in order to accelerate as much as we can the transition towards a circular economy in the coffee sector. The second objective is to collect and share good practices. You can find on the website some good practices and initiatives already available for everyone. And then the third objective is to foster pilot projects and research. Today, there are more than 64 members within the center. You can recognize different kind of members from large organization to small enterprises and coffee farming, research and academia. So we are glad that since 2 years, we are more than 64 and then we are continuously growing. Why circular economy in packaging in a circular economy, and what is the preferred solution for a truly circular coffee packaging? So this question is quite critical, and there is no an easy answer for that. So there is no one size fits all solution for packaging in the coffee sector, but there are a few strategies that can bring you to a circular packaging. So the first one, I think, is to avoid the food waste. So we have to keep in mind that the packaging have to maintain the function and then preserve the freshness of coffee. That's the first requirement we have to achieve. And then the second one is to eliminate unnecessary packaging. So to lower the amount of packaging we need for packing our coffee. And then it means in a different way to lower the weight of the packaging, but at the same time to lowering the environmental impact of raw materials. So by selecting reusable or recycled content material or bio-based content material. At the same time, the packaging at the end of life have to be recyclable. So keep the material in the flow as much as we can. So those are some strategies that can be valid for designing the packaging in a very proper way. But what does it mean, circular packaging? So normally we have to face with a linear economy, what it's called take, make, and waste or dispose. And basically today, most of the packaging is designed in a way that it's use virgin material as a raw material, then it's manufactured for a single use or for a short lifespan, and then it ends in a very end of life poor valorization, so landfill or incineration. So we have to shift towards this model to a new one that is called a circular economy model, where both raw material and the end of life are valorized in a different way. So we have to source our raw material for packaging from renewable or recycled sources, and then keep this material in the loop as much as we can through different strategies like reusing, recycling, and so on. So that's the model we are trying to promote within the center. And it's something that the coffee sector is already doing. So we have a lot of example, and today we will see in our presentation that there are already solutions there, and it's critical to adopt this kind of solution as fast as we can. So just the last message before giving the word to Frederic, that practically there is no one-size-fits-all solution for recycling or reusing coffee packaging, but we have to think about the context where we are acting and we are designing the packaging for. So the specific market, the specific channels, and so on, and then verifying whether the market or the country is able to collect that packaging, to reuse the packaging, and to recycle the packaging. So I leave the word to Frederic, and thanks again for joining the webinar.
Thank you, Dario, for those kind words. Let me, as we start, let me please introduce myself and ITC organization. ITC is a UN organization, a joint agency of the United Nations and the World Trade Organization that was established in 1964 in Geneva. And it's actually the only international agency that is fully dedicated to supporting small businesses as they engage in international trade. Why do we focus on small businesses? Simply because they represent 90% of the enterprises in any country and more than 50% of worldwide employment. In terms of packaging, in the context of ITC, we are working on several levels. We are working with small businesses, including in the coffee sector, supporting, helping them to improve their packaging systems, to access the market, access suppliers. We are also working with business ecosystems, and in the Markup 2 program that we are rolling out in East Africa, for instance, we are working with the packaging ecosystem, so with all the manufacturers, distributors of packaging materials in 6 East African countries. And of course, we also work at the policy levels for the regulations and so on, as you can imagine. As we go back now to the key components for today, so the quick questions that we want to explore are the following: what does circular economy means for packaging, and how does it apply in the coffee sector? We also have the second component of the promising circular packaging and the logistic innovations that are currently being implemented in the coffee sector. But what barriers will stand in the way of scaling them? And lastly, how can coffee companies align packaging decisions with emerging regulations, sustainability objectives, and consumer expectations without compromising product quality or freshness? So circularity in coffee packaging is rapidly emerging as a critical frontier for sustainability, innovation, and regulatory alignment across the global value chain. And as the sector faces mounting environmental pressure and shifting consumer expectations, circular economy principles offer a transformative framework to rethink packaging from design and material to reuse, recycling, and end-of-life strategies. So this webinar explores how circular packaging can regenerate value, reduce waste, and preserve product quality while navigating complex trade-off between recyclability and economic viability. This session dives into practical applications of circularity in packaging. It also addresses the enabling environment, including the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, PPWR, and how companies can align with these frameworks without compromising freshness and functionality. Let me introduce concept of PPWR for the people who are not yet familiar with these new regulations. So PPWR stands for Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation. It's driving the sustainability and the circular economy in Europe. It's a major initiative to reduce the packaging waste and promote circularity systems. It also replaces Directive 2462, and it introduces binding rules across all member states, it's 27. And it is applicable to all packaging placed on the EU market. It should be noticed that under PPWR, the coffee capsules are now considered as packaging materials, then must comply with PPWR regulation. What are the objectives of these regulations? Reduce packaging waste, boost the reuse and refill systems, improve recyclability, increase recycled content, harmonize labeling across the EU market, and strengthen EPR, so extended producer responsibility. Some KPIs that companies will need to comply with. All packaging must be recyclable by 2030. 15% reduction in packaging waste per capita by 2040. Reuse quota, so 10% for the e-commerce by 2030. A recycled content that is ranging between 10 and 50% depending on the packaging type. An improved collection and sorting efficiency. Should be noted that the methods and tools yet to measure are not available, but as soon as they will be ready, they will be shared, of course. What is the impact for the industry and the coffee industry specifically? A shift to recyclable and reusable formats. Adoption of reusable delivery packaging for e-commerce. Redesign for efficiency and compliance for logistics. And at the end, innovative opportunities, materials and systems. As now we will dig into the to the panelists. I would like to introduce to you each of the panelists by starting with Eileen Gordon. Eileen Gordon has been the Secretary General of the European Coffee Federation since 2017, leading the Brussels-based organization that represents over 90% of Europe's coffee trade and industry. With more than 2 decades of experience in the coffee and tea sectors, Eileen is a passionate advocate for sustainability, inclusive, and forward-thinking coffee policies across Europe and beyond. Before joining the European Coffee Federation, she served as Secretary General of both the Spanish Coffee Federation and the Spanish Tea and Herbal Infusions Association. Her work focuses on EU regulatory affairs, sustainability frameworks, and strengthening dialogue across the coffee value chain. Eileen is a regular speaker at global coffee industry events where she brings clarity, insight, and vision to the evolving challenges and opportunities facing the sector. Let me ask you a quick question, Eileen. European Coffee Federation has developed a new guideline on environmental footprint methodology for coffee, including the packaging and logistic components. What need did you want to address? And how different is it from existing lifecycle analysis tool? And lastly, how does it complement or build synergies with PPWR KPIs?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Frederic, for that great introduction. I love the part in clarity. I think it's something that we're all thriving to get more and more clarity about everything in general. We're really happy to be here today. So thank you as well, Dario and Catherine, for the kind invitation. And really happy to share our journey. So responding to your questions, why did we believe that we needed an environmental footprint methodology? The answer is because we thought we needed comparability and credibility. So there were a whole stack of different LCAs out there, all with different functional units, different system boundaries, different data sets. So we really felt that we needed some type of harmonization. We needed a simple, super straightforward, science-based methodology that would allow all participants, everyone in the industry, to be able to measure the environmental footprint of coffee in the same way. So this was key to us. Why is it different from other LCA assistance tools? Sorry, I think it really is because this is a guideline, it's a rule book, and it's not a software. So this means that you can, as long as you follow these rules, this implies that you can use different LCA tools and you can have a comparison like to like. It is a coffee-specific guidance document. LCAs are normally very, very generic, but we've tailor-made it to coffee. So this enables us not to compare apples and oranges in a way. We've really got a clearly defined functional unit. And last but not least, I think it also is a very good verification system. It's developed very closely to the product environmental footprints published many years ago by the European Commission. So our understanding is that if the Green Claims Directive ever sees the light, this will be a methodology following a credible system that will allow our substantiation. So that would be the top line of why we have developed this document. But what I would really like to do in the next slides is to be able to share our journey, where it all started from. So that if you'd be so kind, fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, it all started in 2023 with a very simple question. What on earth is the environmental footprint of a cup of coffee? We really had an estimation, but we didn't know where we stood. What was the benchmark? Were we so bad as they were putting us in public media and so forth? So we hired the services of Sphera just to ask that simple question. Can you please benchmark us? And using international recognized standards, this is the result that they showcased. So to our delight, we saw that actually our environmental footprint, or the environmental footprint of a cup of coffee, was actually 3 times lower than other beloved beverages like beer, bottled mineral water, and so forth. So this gave us a little bit of a breather, said, okay, we are on track. And now what we needed to understand is, are there differences in the way that we consume our cup of coffee? So if we have a coffee brewed from a capsule, or if we have an espresso or a filter coffee, what happens? What are the results like? So in our next slide, we can see these results. What we did back in the day is we used a Monte Carlo simulation. So what that means is, because at the time we more or less understood what impacted the environmental footprint of coffee, but we didn't really have credible or very specific input data. So how do we use the primary data, the secondary data? What impacts are we missing out on? What we decided to do is, look, let's just take all the different ways of consuming coffee that we have in the market. Let's put it through a credible modeled system. And we're throwing in random numbers. So we let the system model it. And in the end, we did not get an average. So using the best case scenario and the worst case scenario, this is what we ended up with. 2 clear categories for non-single serve units and for single serve units. And we realized, well, there's not such big a difference. So our environmental impact is between 80 and 120 grams of CO2 equivalent per coffee serving. So this actually made sense. Many thought that the environmental footprint of a capsule would be larger, obviously, because it's got more packaging, you would think. But because the amount of coffee that we use in a coffee capsule is approximately 30 to 50% less than when you're preparing an espresso and a filter coffee, the results come more or less in line, despite the fact that for a single serve unit, you're obviously using more packaging. And the reason is because the most influential factors in our environmental footprint would be coffee for cultivation, which is around 50%, followed by brewing, manufacturing, and packaging. So in the next slide, we have the end result. So with the previous information, we knew what the LCA, the life cycle assessment of coffee, was. We had a good snapshot, we had a good picture, but we didn't know how to measure it. And this is where we really understood, okay, it's not enough to know more or less what those impacts would be. We need a common tool to be able to measure. We need to define a very clear functional unit that is useful for us. So in this methodology, we identified 3 functional units. We've got the classical black coffee. Second, we can also compare 1 kilo of green coffee after post-harvest. And we can also compare 1 kilo of roasted or soluble coffee after being manufactured. So this enables us to make comparable claims in a like-for-like comparison system. So once again, we're not comparing apples and pears or bananas. We can really compare 2 products that are exactly the same. However, for this to be of any use, it's really important that the methodology is adopted as a common standard. We really would love for it to become a reference for anyone that is doing an environmental footprint of coffee. And this way we will avoid third parties like Agrivalis, for instance, imposing the methodology. Agrivalis, for instance, what they do is they refer to 1 kilo of roasted coffee. So you can imagine the environmental impact of 1 kilo of roasted coffee if you want to compare it with a yogurt. So therefore, that's why we understood it needed to be broken down so we can focus on a black cup of coffee. So what is the link with circular economy? You're probably asking yourselves. So the conclusion would be that PEP quantifies what the circular economy aims to improve. So it gives us a way of measuring the coffee's footprint, and this way we can really help design circular solutions. So just as a last point, responding to your question of how does it complement PPWA KPIs, I can identify a couple of criteria. So we've got, for instance, the designed for recycling criteria. Well, PEF, what it does, it models end-of-life scenarios, and it quantifies climate or energy trade-offs of material switches if you're using aluminium, plastic, or compostable. And this can actually help you meet the recycling KPIs. Another good example is recycled content. The PEP can quantify the benefit of post-consumer recycled content. And this will support the evidence of EQ-modulated EPR fees. And another example that would come to mind is, for instance, packaging minimization or empty space that needs to be reduced in this packaging minimization. So what PEP does, it can link the weight format to transport and breakage impacts. So it could really establish, it can enable that lightweighting decisions can still work across the logistics. So this is really important. And look, I've got one more, separate collection and national performance. PEP uses country-specific collection and recycling rates. So this can really help you track your KPI progress over time, and it can also help improvement. So at the end of the day, I think we've really got a good tool that can really help us measure, and measurement is everything, because if you can't measure, you don't really know how much you have improved your circularity, for instance. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Eileen. And I would remind people that they can also download the guidelines and the tool for the measurement directly on the ECF website.
Thank you.
Let's move to panelist number 2, Mr. Graham Houlder. Graham worked for Unilever for 23 years in a wide range of global roles in the supply chain, in R&D, and in sustainability, supporting both the foods and non-foods businesses. Since 2009, Graham is the managing director of Sloop, SLOOP, who offer consulting services, project management, and tools related to making packaging more sustainable. More importantly for today, Graham is the project coordinator and founder of the circular economy for flexible packaging called CEFLEX initiative. CEFLEX is a collaborative initiative by over 180 companies from across the full flexible packaging value chain. CEFLEX works with and across the value chain to stimulate the delivery of the circular economy for flexible packaging materials in Europe by 2030. I have two questions for you, actually, Graham. How can we make the circular economy economically sustainable? Question one. Question number two. Flexible plastics are widely used by brand owners for retail and online distribution channels of roasted coffee. How does PPWR impact flexible plastic industry in the coffee sector? Is it considered an earthquake, a storm, or just heavy rain? And why building a collaborative initiative representing the entire value chain of flexible packaging in a context of high level of competitiveness? Graham, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Frederic. And also a big thank you to the organizers of this conference for the opportunity to present. The questions you pose, three of them. The economic one, I would like to park until we get into the discussion panel, because that requires more time. The second question about the PPWR legislation being either an earthquake, a storm, or heavy rain. It was a very interesting question, and I would like to suggest that it probably depends on when you start trying to comply with the PPWR. If you wait until the last minute, so December 2029, it's likely to be an earthquake. And we know earthquakes can kill people in large numbers, and we would like to try and avoid that. However, if you start tomorrow, I would like to suggest that it's probably limited to heavy rain. And we know that heavy rain can cause some collateral damage, but normally it's not a big disaster. And I think this is probably the underlying message that I would like to give today is we need to start today, not wait until the packaging and packaging waste regulation comes into force in 2030. The third question, I think, was to do with why do we need a collaborative effort? And the short answer to that, and maybe we come back to that in the discussion panel, is that we can't do this alone. No one part of the value chain can do this alone. If we don't all act together with a common vision, we'll all be going in different directions and nothing will happen. So the idea behind CEFLEX is let's understand what the common vision is, let's make sure it works, and then let's make sure that each part of the value chain plays its role in delivering what is necessary. So those are the three questions. But I want to go into a bit more detail on the packaging and packaging waste regulation. So Dario, can we have the next slides, please? Probably two. Click again, please. Before I get onto the packaging waste, this is a small snapshot of what CEFLEX is. So we have 180 companies from all parts of the value chain, many global operators, some just Europe, big ones, small ones, but all having an equal place at the table in the CEFLEX project. And it is a project. It has an end date, and that is really once we've delivered the circular economy for flexible packaging. Next slide, please. So what is the PPWR and when do the various bits come into operation? The first, it came into law in 2025, but all the targets will only be effective as of after 2030. So we needed that period to develop the SEN design guidelines and to develop the detail in terms of the delegated acts which define what is designed for recycling and how you assess it. So in 2030, you have to have your packaging recyclable by design to be allowed on the market. The EPR fees need to be linked to recyclability grades. This is the A, B, C, and there are some mandatory recycled content targets. So for typical coffee-based packaging, there are 10% for food contact materials, 10% recycled content. That's either PE or PP, and or if it's non-food contact packaging, it's a 35% recycled content, not small amounts of recycled content, especially given what's in practice today. That's combined with a recycling rate for all plastic packaging of 55% on average across each member state. In 2035, the screws are tightened, and that flexible packaging itself has to be recycled at 55%. It's a huge requirement. And then in 2038, the ABC grades, which define recyclability, D is not recyclable and it's not allowed on the market. Those get reduced to A and B. So design becomes even more important. So can I move to the next slide, please? So what is it going to take to realize this? If we look at the 55% recycling rate, which is for me one of the key deliverables in 2030, it requires you to collect at least 82%, sort at least 82%, and recycle at least 82%. So you multiply each of those together, and you get to a 55% recycling rate. I think there are only 1 or 2 countries in Europe currently close to reaching the 55% recycling rates. So it's a huge order. The reason why CEFLEX has adopted this is because it is about as close to circularity as it is possible. It may even be a little bit too tight for flexible packaging, but we need to work towards that as our target because it is true circularity. Next slide, please. So what does that translate into where we are today compared to where we need to be in 2030? These are rough numbers. We've modeled them using quite extensive and complex systems. In 2022, that's what we had in terms of installed capacity, about 2.4 million tons of recycling capacity. That's input capacity for mechanical recycling, 1.5 million tons for rigids. This is polyolefins, not PET. And then we've got hardly any capacity for chemical recycling. And chemical recycling is today the only technology which is approved by EFSA to produce food contact materials. Jump forward to 2030, we need 8 million tons for flexible packaging and 6 million tons for rigid packaging. That translates to over 1 million tons increased in flexible packaging recycling and just under 1 million tons for rigid packaging every year from now until the 2030 term. And bear in mind that each slug of 1 million tons has to be planned and signed off and be ready because it takes 2 years to, at least 2 years, probably even 3 in some countries to realize that. Next slide, please. So related to that is design. Why is this important? It's because if you design the packaging for recycling, it determines how much comes back, the business case. So what is the it cost to recycle these materials, and how much comes back, and that's limited to the yield and what it actually costs. But it also, very importantly, determines the quality. If you are going to go back into food or high-end film-to-film type recycling, you need very good quality inputs, and the design of the pack plays a huge role there. And thirdly, we need to have access to the right recycled content and be able to show that we comply with the ABC regulations. And design is a key aspect in terms of that. Moving forward, next slide, please. So the design, you guys are expert at the left-hand side of the screen. Those are exceptionally important criteria and have to be always top of mind. The bit that you don't control is where your pack becomes waste, and this is why we're asking you to bring in the design for a circular economy guidelines into your design requirements, because that increases the chances of these materials being recycled and being recycled back at a minimum cost and at producing the highest quality. Next slide, please. So on our guidelines, which are downloadable from the website link there at the bottom left-hand corner, we have a tool that, well, first of all, we have the guidelines, and we have a traffic light table for each PE and for PP for flexible packaging as to what levels fall into the green, which is fully recyclable, yellow, which is limited compatibility with mechanical recycling, and red, which is not compatible. And if you follow those, then you can have a very good idea as to where your pack is going to be recyclable, independent of the place that it becomes waste. And more importantly, it'll allow you to comply with the packaging and packaging waste regulation. Next slide, please. What I forgot to mention on the last chart is that we have a tool that enables you to put your pack design into there and get a screenshot out like this that tells you whether you're green, yellow, or red. So and that will help you comply with the packaging and packaging waste regulation. Our guidelines are very closely aligned with the SEN guidelines that will be brought out, and they're probably a lot more extensive because the SEN process requires everybody to agree to certain limits, and yeah, that's not always possible. So if there's no agreement, they're left out of the guidelines. Ours include the full Monty. The last thing I wanted to raise, and this is a precursor into the discussion, is there's a dilemma. If there's a lot of demand for recycled content, the prices will go up, and it'll become cost effective to produce the recycled content that is needed. However, if you look at the 55% recycling rate, that translates to producing 5.5 million tons of recycled materials. We only need 4 million tons. So who's going to use the rest of that material? And this becomes an issue when the virgin prices are low, because if they're higher than the recycled, if the recycled materials are higher than the virgin prices, nobody's going to use them unless you're required to by law. So we have an economic challenge here which needs to be resolved, and today we're seeing closure instead of recycling capacity. Instead of expanding it. So I'm going to leave it there, Frederic. Apologies for going a little bit over time, but hopefully it was a useful insight into the discussion for later.
Thank you very much, Graham. Very eye-opener. Let's move on now. So we've been with CEFLEX, with the flexible packaging industry. Now I propose you to move to Hanuman. May we have the next slide, please? With Mr. Hanuman Jain, founder and CEO of EcoTact. So, Hanuman, another great introduction, I guess. I hope. So Hanuman is the founder and CEO of EcoTact Bags. He is a driving force in sustainable and hermetic packaging for the coffee and cocoa sector. Leveraging his expertise in finance and marketing, he has transformed EcoTact into a globally recognized brand, celebrated for innovation and environmental stewardship. The brand's recyclable and reusable bags are sold in over 60 countries. I've earned major recognitions, including the ACA New Orleans in 2021 and ACAG Japan 2022 awards. Mr. Jain's central mission is driven by the principle, maintain freshness of food products and protect the planet. That is to preserve coffee's quality throughout its bean to cup journey. This dedication empowers the entire supply chain from farmers to roasters. A well-connected industry enthusiast, he manages a vast community across 54 plus countries and is an active member of organizations like SCA, ACAG, and IYCA. As a world traveler, and I can witness, philanthropics, and an educator, Mr. Jain brings the mindful global perspective to entrepreneurship, expertly blending commerce, sustainability, and conscious living. Welcome, Hanuman. Let me ask you a series of first questions. Packaging of green and roasted beans in the specialty coffee bulk product has been moving from jute bags years back, which are considered sustainable, to PP woven bags that are recyclable, to multi-layers films. Those multi-layer bags are focusing on freshness of the product and are not particularly recognized to be eco-friendly. So what is the impact of PPWR on the export of specialty coffee in bulk to EU markets by farmers using EcoTact type of bags? And question 2, how do you reconcile freshness and sustainability for bulk products from a performance perspective?
Thank you very much, Frederic.
Yours.
Thank you very much, Frederic, for a wonderful introduction. I also take this opportunity to thank the entire team and the organizers for providing me this opportunity to present our case. Rightfully mentioned, EcoTact, the brand, is a combination of two words, ecology and intact. And both are equally important, preserving coffee and at the same time preserving the ecology or the environment around us. And this has been the focus for our brand all along, ever since our inception. So as my predecessors very well mentioned, Elaine and Mr. Graham, both of them had clearly, talked about some very vital points. If you look at specific, point which Elaine had made, close to 50% of the carbon footprint is coming from the farm side or, production side of the coffee, and which is a significant number. Now, it is very important to preserve what you produce in terms of coffee. And if you're not preserving the inherent qualities of aroma, moisture, all the important parameters of coffee, which eventually reaches the final consumer of coffee, the whole purpose gets defeated of the production. And a lot of carbon footprint gets lost in that. So it is very important to look at the functionality of a packaging, which is preserving the hard-earned coffee or, fruit of the toil, fruit of the efforts of a farmer in every nook and corner of the world. So it is very important to preserve that. So here, as a hermetic packaging provider, we have two important roles to play. One is look at the functionality of the bag to increase the shelf life of the product, protect the aroma, protect the cupping score levels of the coffee. So that is one very critical part. The second, and also equally important, which may not have been given equal importance, but gradually it is the sustainability side. And on the sustainability side, reuse has been one of the easiest doable thing in your packaging. Then the second and difficult part is the recyclability part of the packaging. And third, which has come into the picture over last few years, is the usage of PCR or post-consumer recycled plastic into the manufacturing of your packaging. So this is both these both these are two different sides of the same coin, and both are equally important. We have moved from jute bags, as rightfully mentioned by you, to different packaging now. Jute used to be a product where there would be ingression of external moisture, ingression of insects, and so on and so forth. So with time, it always made sense to upgrade it. And because again, we are looking at the functionality side, we are looking at not wasting what has been produced. So this was an automatic choice for anybody. Also, I think economics has ruled that, because with the pricing of coffee going up and consumption also increasing globally, it always made sense to preserve, the coffee in its inherent form. Now, so the focus, as rightfully mentioned, was not so much on the sustainability side, but has been, moving to the sustainability side now. Now, if you look at very important parameters or the design structure of the hermetic packaging, what we have done over the years is, we started by making those packaging reusable. So every single packaging that Ecotact produces now is reusable. That was the first step which Ecotact consciously took. Ecotact again also ensured that it is not using any hard pigments. The moment you use hard pigments in your packaging, it becomes very difficult to recycle. So all its packaging is transparent. Now, the second and most important step was that of recyclability. On the recyclability side, we came up with the solutions, in different parts of the world where the used bags are collected for recycling. So we needed special facilities for recycling. This is where the whole discussion of PPWR now comes in. And here there are two parts to it, and both are equally important. First and foremost is, ideally, all these packaging should be easy to recycle, should not require special facilities. And Ecotact has taken that step. Ecotact has taken that step of making the structure of the packaging such that it is compliant to the newer regulations of PPWR. Our certain certificates are pending from Recyclas and also from FTC, as well as European authorities. So all these certificates are pending, but this will be presented to the market the moment we have these certificates. But this was a conscious decision that we have taken and changed the design structure of the packaging. What this design structure does is that it allows hermetic packaging to be recycled along with regular LDPE or regular polyethylene bag, which is used in every household across the globe. So this was a remarkable step that we have, taken. And as you mentioned, changing this cannot be easy because it has cost implications for us. It has cost implications eventually for the users. Now, as Graham had mentioned, and also the whole discussion regarding PPWR, that that there is an introduction of usage of PCR into the raw materials. Now, at the moment, we have to look at the practicality as to, the recycled material is not considered to be safe for food packaging. And that is a fact across the globe, because, credible PCR is still not available, or it is available at a prohibitively expensive price. So this is one problem which we all need to work together in order to enable, availability of PCR for food contact layers of the packaging. So this is an ongoing effort, and I think with gradually in the given time, it will not be a problem. And I think because when there's something has to be done, sometimes regulations help making this possible. Of course, timelines do increase sometimes, but then it does help, and I think it is for the good eventually, for the environment, for the sustainability overall. Now, as you can see on the screen, this is what we have. This is a typical discussion which happens: monolayer versus sustainable multi-layer. So typically, it was understood that any monolayer packaging is easy to recycle, is a safer packaging. But if you're focusing on functionality of preserving the essential qualities of green beans, I think we ought to go to the multi-layer. But if the multi-layer film can be sustainable, I think that's the next best thing that one can do. And this is what we have tried to put in. With this, we really would not need to go to special recycling centers, and EcoTact hermetic packaging can be collected and recycled at any of the mainstream recycling centers across the globe. This is an effort that we have put. And so I think going forward, there will be some back and forth on the costing side, on the availability of raw material side. But I think this is a doable task, and gradually it can be done with efforts from all across the industry.
Thank you very much, Unaman, for those exciting coming development, I guess, on the on those multi-layer material and with regards to PPWR. So now I would like to ask the three panelists and also asking Dario to join a discussion around questions. So basically, I will ask a few questions and request our four panelists to provide their perspective on and potentially reinforce or disagree with others. We don't know. We will see. And in parallel, I will also mention to the participant that they can post their questions in the Q&A zone. Okay, so feel free to post your question in the Q&A zone. If it doesn't work, do it in the chat, alternate solution. And after the few questions to the panelists, then we will pick the questions of the participants and we will ask them to the panelists. So I will start with a very easy question to all of you. And let me maybe share my screen because it's going to be easier for you to follow on the question. So, question 1. In scope or out of scope question, the discussions on PPWR and recyclability and circular systems mainly focus on recyclability and recycled content in the coffee sector. What is the status regarding the reusability of packaging materials and the option of biodegradable or compostable packaging in the context of PPWR?
Frederic, we can't see your screen if you're putting the questions onto the screen.
You can't, but I can see myself.
Okay.
Let me see.
Maybe reshare.
Yes, that's weird.
And your picture has also frozen, Frederic, if that is an indicator of anything.
We can still hear you.
Frederic, I would suggest to stop sharing your screen and we can just go through the questions verbally.
Okay, maybe I can take the lead on that. This balance between reusability and recyclability. Reusability has the ability to reduce the amount of packaging that's placed onto the market because it goes round multiple times. And there is a reduction target as part of the PPWR. I can't recall exactly from memory exactly what that is, but it's not insignificant. I think it's like a 25% reduction target. And reuse enables you to do that. One of the requirements of reuse systems, though, is that they do have to be recyclable at the end of their life. So that is important. As regards to compostable packaging, this is still not fully decided because we need the delegated acts, because for compostable packaging to be composted, it needs to be collected and enter a composting stream, and this isn't available in all countries, particularly when it comes to packaging items. So we need some more detail there on as to what is required for compostable packaging. Do we have Frederic back yet?
We do not. So I'll take over in the meantime.
Otherwise, I can jump in and then try to get an answer also on the point of recyclability and reusability. And then I think in the case of coffee sector, since we need a very high barrier, reusability, it's very interesting, but it's very challenging at the same time, because we have to guarantee the freshness of coffee. That's the first requirement we have. So there are a lot of pilots here and there around about reusability, and I think it's mostly interesting for example, some items like coffee cups. So there are multiple options and pilots that shows that reusable coffee cups are a good alternative to the single use. But for the traditional coffee packaging, so the flexible one, it's quite tricky in terms of also if we consider the environmental impact of a reusable system versus the single use. So the flexible one is still very efficient in terms of material usage than other systems that can be reusable, but maybe we should use rigid packaging instead of flexible. So we have always to look at the whole picture, and then starting from data, as Eileen stated in her presentation before. So having a tool that allow us to show what are the benefits, pros and cons of each solution, it can be very, very useful and the starting point of each decision, I think.
We have one experience pertaining to compostable packaging in our organization. We, as we understand, in compostable also, industrial compostable is not very well accepted because as each one of us are aware that there are no special collection centers for industrial compostable packaging. So, to avoid that, we experimented with a packaging which was home compostable and certified home compostable. We ran a pilot project, but there were practical difficulties, and I think pertaining to, I'm talking specific to green beans and green coffee. Most of the green beans are produced in origin countries which are in tropical region across the globe. So the moment the packaging is produced and it reaches the destination, the minimum time it takes is between 1 month to 3 months. And a packaging which is home compostable in 6 months or 1 year, if it reaches in 3 months to the origin, and then when they are going to use and when does that packaging reach the eventual destination in consuming country, be it in Europe, be it in US or Japan, I think the time lag is such that the packaging itself starts decomposing, and the whole purpose of having the packaging, does not work. So I think so that is when we decided that no, we will have to hold it back, because it also had massive cost implications. All these packaging had to be shipped by air and so on and so forth. So it eventually this was our conclusion that it is not practical to have home compostable packaging for green beans at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Hanuman. I'm back. Sorry for the interruption.
Welcome back, Frederic.
So I guess I missed all the answers. So maybe Catherine, I'll let you complete on these questions because I don't want to interfere.
No, Frederic, I was just going to say, so we heard from the different panelists on your first question about recyclability and biodegradability. Let me ask one, excuse me, follow-up question to EcoTact, and then we'll go to you, Frederic, with the rest of your questions. There was a question from the panelists, and I think it just fits well here. Does PPWR apply to your product as hermetic liners being shipped into Europe?
Well, at the moment, there is no clarity, but see, EcoTact as an organization does not just look at the regulation. There has to be, a self focus as well. And this is what we've been following over the years. There's no regulation pertaining to reuse. There's no regulation per se. But we did that like 7-8 years back. And we continue to do that. And this is exactly what we are doing. At the moment, there is still confusion pertaining to the food contact layer, which we are talking about, because the raw material for food contact layer, although it's not a significant number, it's only 10%, but availability is a big issue at the moment. And I think the following regulation, which are likely to come in 2028, probably will throw some light on it. And if there is a need, we would be ready to take the necessary step for sure.
Okay. Graham, in terms of from a CEFLEX perspective, how do you see biodegradability or recyclability, or is it a different pattern?
From a CEFLEX perspective, well, let me take it from a flexible packaging perspective. Most flexible packaging is used to deliver food. Food requires oxygen and water barriers. These are not readily available, both of them together, in compostable packaging. When you compost something, you need it to be susceptible to mainly water, and because that's what starts the hydrolysis process that ends up breaking the materials down. So we see compostable packaging as being a niche market at this point in time. Recyclability is going to be the big solution, or the big solution to meeting the PPWR going forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Next questions. What are the main challenges related to the economic sustainability of the circularity schemes with PPWR? Mainly with the challenge of 2030 with the recycled content in the packaging material. So what are the main challenges related to the economic sustainability of the circularity schemes?
Okay, so CEFLEX now knows how to make flexible packaging circular. If you follow the guidelines, it can be recycled and returned to the market to be used again at even very high quality levels. So we know how to do that. The big challenge is how can we do this economically? And the economic challenge is because now we have very low virgin costs and very low transport costs. So in Europe, labor is expensive, energy is expensive relative to some of the other regions of the world, which means that it can be cheaper to import recycled or virgin materials from outside of the European Union. That means that it puts pressure on the profitability of the European recyclers. So this is one of the challenges that CEFLEX is focused on at the moment. How do we ensure that we maintain the required capacities in Europe to recycle what is required? And one of the big questions we need the European Commission's help with is, what do they see as circular? Is it Circular EU, Circular Europe, so EU 27 plus 3, or is it Circular Global? Because that very much depends or will determine where the investments in the necessary capacities are made. And I would like to suggest, if there's anybody from the Commission listening today, that this is one of the key aspects of the Circular Economy Act that needs to be clarified ASAP.
Thank you, Graham, for your comment. Anybody would like to share insights?
So from our side, and now talking on the side of coffee capsules, the big economical challenge that we have as such is the fact that having been classified as packaging doesn't imply that we have been recognized as packaging. So therefore, we've got two specific types of products in the market. We've got the permeable single-serve units, or the soft after use, which have been mandated compostable, is one of the only exceptions that actually exist within PPWR. And then we've got the non-permeable, the plastic and the alu capsules. So for aluminium, it's relatively easy. There is a good circularity going on, but we do have a big challenge with the plastic capsules. So right now, for us, from an economic perspective, the big challenge is how do we ensure that we are effectively sorted and recycled? So it's not the same as just being collected. So how do we meet those targets when today, because of the characteristics of our coffee capsule, we actually fall through the trommel? So we actually go directly into the landfill. So we're not sorted, we just go into the landfill, and obviously we are not recycled. So this is a big challenge to be able to ensure that our products can continue on the market. We need to comply with the design for recycling criteria, which is complicated already. Why? Because of the high leftover ratio that we've got by nature within our capsules. And then we need to guarantee by 2020-35 that we're recycled at scale with systems that are not even in place. And the same applies for compostability. So we are mandated to be compostable, but as Graham was mentioning, this does not imply that we're actually accepted by the biowaste system. So therefore, it's a big paradox. So now we'll start paying all these EPR fees, which is fine, but in a way, they should be earmarked. They should guarantee that what we are paying is like directly investing into the different systems and the different markets. And this is one of the big challenges that we have, that even though it is a PPWR regulation and it should be applied in the same way in all countries, the reality is completely different. We have 27 different realities across the member states, very much in particular for coffee capsules.
Okay. Eileen, may I ask you maybe to share a couple of differences from one country to another related to this management of the capsules? Just for people to highlight the fact that harmonizations is well written and understood, but in the implementation there can be some variations.
Of course, happy to do so. Thank you for the question. So for instance, Germany is actually our best example for the sorting and the recycling of plastic coffee capsules. Why? Because for the past years, they have had a voluntary scheme in which they have voluntarily adhered to the EPR fees. They have been paying fees on a voluntary basis. They have struck deals with the PROs operating in the country. So therefore, there is a relatively effective sorting and recycling rate. However, for instance, in Germany, you are not allowed to dispose coffee or tea bags in the bio-waste system. Then we can go to the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, they came to a national agreement, and because they managed to ensure that 80% of the tea bags and coffee bags were compostable, the local authorities have accepted them. So therefore, you can dispose of your coffee or tea bag in the compostable Dutch waste system. And then I can take you over to Spain, where the PROs, the recovering plants, do not accept today capsules. So therefore, it's the industry that has come together, has organized itself, and based normally in several countries they've done this, based on the traditional Nespresso collection systems, if you recall, in their shops and so forth, they have built a new system to try and collect so they can sort and recycle. And in Portugal, it's even more extreme. They're working with municipalities, and there's over, 1,000 municipalities in Portugal. So you can see it's really, really, really challenging. And it's really important for the coffee sector, because even if in volume capsules don't represent a high margin, in countries like in countries like Portugal or Spain, it can be at approximately 40% of the value of the coffee market. So it's really critical that we ensure recycling.
So Eileen, if I put myself in the shoes of an SME who's outside EU and want like a coffee roaster who want to export roasted coffee in capsule in Europe, traditionally we hear people from a strategic point of view saying, I'm going to enter in Italy and then I will distribute my product across the EU, or I will enter by UK, jumping to Europe. And then, so whatever the entry point, is it still a reliable and efficient strategy, to your opinion, to enter the EU market with a capsule type of single use?
It's a really good question again. I would invite them to brace themselves, because it's not only PPWR. For instance, if they're actually exporting coffee capsules that are full of coffee, well, welcome to EUDR. If it's a paper capsule, welcome to EUDR as well, because they would be the ones first placing on the market. So therefore, they would have to comply with very strict requirements. Only speaking PPWR, it would be very important that they comply with the design for recycling requirements that will be published in 2030. And then for each country, they would have to know exactly where to pay their EPR fees and what the recycling system and panorama looks like. So I think the best thing that they can do is find a strong counterpart that is very familiar with that market in particular. So if it's the French market, someone in the French market that is fully aware of all the combining rules that exist also on a national level. So if they've got good advice, I'm sure they will be able to succeed, but they really need advice. They can't just wake up one day and decide to explore the EU market. That would be my recommendation. And also contact with their commercial office, so their embassies. So if it's Colombia, for instance, if they've got good embassies, good commercial offices working in Europe, please reach out to them, because they will be able to help you for sure.
Graham?
I think you're absolutely right, Eileen. Everything you've said applies today. In 2030, when the PPWR targets become effective, then it all changes, because the design requirements in a regulation apply equally across all the countries in the EU. So it's not Switzerland, not the UK, and is it not Norway as well? Although I think they are implementing the PPWR anyway. So at least from a design perspective, come 2030, you'll be safe. The point you make about EPR is a very valid point. And if you're importing into all of the different European countries, then you are going to have to register with those EPR systems to put that packaging on the market, unless the amount of packaging you put on the market is below the threshold. And I would suggest that for a lot of these operators, you're probably operating below the threshold, which is in some countries, I think in the Netherlands, it's 50 tons of packaging per year. And it varies across the different member states, but that could help simplify things. But otherwise, if you're above that, it's going to be complicated.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you. A question on the recycling system. How does the experience of recycling in Europe apply or not to the context in other regions, especially in the global south? So can we do a copy-paste of recycling systems that would be economically sustainable in Europe and copy-paste in the south global? How do you see that?
So the recycling system itself is largely copy-paste, because to turn sorted materials into a plastic pellet, which can be reused, you put it through an extruder and with some vacuum and some deodorization, and so those technologies are copy paste. How you get to the baled materials is what's going to differ by country, and that depends on the cost of labor, the cost of energy, and so that's not copy paste. That will be very much how do we do this locally most effectively.
Okay. Anyone willing to jump in?
Maybe Frederic, just comment on that. That is already also linked to the previous question about the economics. So I think what the Center for Circular Economy should do, or is to help sharing the know-how. So we got a very high know-how in Europe in order to collect and develop recyclable packaging. All this know-how should be shared, especially in the global south, in order to, since sometimes it's just starting from the scratches. We have to take care of all the efforts that have been done in Europe in the last 10, 20, 30 years on this point, and then starting from that, and then initiatives like the CEFLEX one that is already sharing the design for recycling guidelines, and then all these reports are very useful in order to share this know-how that is collected in Europe, because I think that was the place where all the regulations started in terms of packaging. But this is a very important aspect, and also in terms of economics, we just don't have to reinvent the wheel anytime. So just taking inspiration from what has been done here, it can be very useful in order to accelerate the transition towards recyclability, even in countries where today packaging is not collected. So we have to implement those streams.
Can I just raise the Global Packaging Treaty, which is still ongoing? That's a hugely important development, and we're still cautiously optimistic we're going to get a treaty, but let's wait until the next iteration. But one of the things that the treaty will require is extended producer responsibility, and whatever the format that takes, it's the source of funding that enables the collection, sorting, and recycling of these materials to happen at the levels that it's required by the treaty. So, and in terms of extended producer responsibility, Europe has got lots of experience. Not all of it good. There are lots of changes needed, but it's a good place to cut your teeth to see what works and what doesn't work. So EPR is a key enabler of getting recyclability throughout the world, including the global south.
Okay. Thank you for the precision, Graham. Let me take a few minutes to get the questions from the audience, and give a chance to the panelists to respond to those questions. I have a question. Question number 1. Will PPWR include the jute bags and plastic bags like Grain Pro, EcoTact, in which the coffee is exported to the EU? Who want to raise? May I nominate? Yeah, please.
I already posted a short answer underneath that one, and that means yes. It will apply to any packaging that comes into the into the European Union, but the targets and the design requirements will be different to plastic, obviously.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether it's bulk product or retail pack; both are concerned.
Yes,
absolutely.
Next question. Do coffee origin countries... Oh, have you already responded to... Yeah, Graham. So do coffee origin countries offer reduced tariff for packaging with some recycled content, or are they treated the same? And I would add, when will this start? As roasting migrates to origins, packaging costs are a major factor in the profitability of such operation. Who want to provide an answer to this? Is there a reduced tariff for packaging when you have recycled the percentage of recycled content as of today? And what will be the case after 2030?
Yeah, I can start, and then I let Graham and Eileen and Human. But I think there will be an incentive through the EPR, the modulated EPR fees. It's not really clear yet. There are already some countries that are applying modulated fees on packaging that already had some recycled content inside. So that could be a framework for incentivize the use of recycled content beside the mandatory requirements, because for packaging that contains more than 5% plastic, the plastic content should contain recycled content as mandatory requirements by 2030. So I think EPR scheme could push a bit more on this side, incentivize those packaging that have high recycled content on that. But yeah, I let the other panelists to complete my answer.
I added that I'm not aware of any coffee origin countries offering this at this point in time. Eco-modulation and packaging taxes based on certain recycled content at the moment do exist in Europe, but they're all different, and sometimes it's actually cheaper not to comply with the optional, it's not mandatory, discount that you get on your tax if you just simply because the recycled content's too expensive.
Just a clarification question. Yes, or Hanuman, please.
Yeah, so based on our experience that we've been shipping our bags to over 60 countries, we haven't come across any country in the origin side which is applying any tariff for for content which is not only virgin. So there is no such thing at the moment. In the consuming side, as Graham also said, I've at least come across UK to be putting higher taxes for packaging which has recycled content in it, lower tariff for the packaging which has recycled content into it. That is something which we are aware of, but otherwise I don't see, I haven't come across any such thing.
Follow-up question on this. Eileen, could you please confirm whether or not your guides, so the calculation for the CO2 emissions that was developed by ECF, do you have already taken into account the possibility that you can use recycled content into the calculation?
Yes, it is. It is taken into consideration in one way or another, but it is there. It is a variable that is included within the methodology to be aware of. It is.
Okay. And the same way in CEFLEX, I think you have a guideline to help companies looking and manufacturers to decide what type of packaging they should use in which directions in order to have a recyclable packaging for their coffee products. How is considered this option of to introduce the notion of recycled content?
So for food packaging, it's relatively simple, but also relatively harsh, because the only EFSA, European Food Safety Authority, recognized food contact polyolefin, so PE or PP, recycled material has to come from a chemical recycled source. Chemical recycling is still developing. We have less than 100,000 tons in Europe today, probably maybe double that globally. And by 2030, flexible packaging alone will need over 1 million tons of in-feed chemical recycling capacity to meet the 10% requirement of the packaging that is placed onto the European market. The reason why there's not more capacity happening at the moment is because the European Commission hasn't agreed or clarified what the mass balance rules are. So if you're recycling something, how much of that qualifies as recycled content? The chemical recycling process, it goes into a polymerization unit at the end after pyrolysis, and it's a calculated yield, and that becomes a lot more complicated, and the European Commission hasn't clarified those rules yet, and so consequently I mean, those rules could be very different. You have at the very bottom end, you can maybe get a 30 to 40% yield, or you could get a 50% yield, and that determines the economics. And for that reason, we are seeing a lot of potential chemical recycling capacity investments being placed on hold until we understand what the economics behind that processes are. So it's, if you have access to chemical recycled content, I would try and book it for 2030, which will probably mean you have to start using some of it now, even if at whatever price.
I think that we have. Thank you very much for those responses. I think we've gone through all the questions in the QA, and we are getting close to the end, unfortunately, because I wish we could have had an hour more to discuss the topic. So I will thank all the 4 panelists for their presentation and responses to those very important elements. As today's discussion has shown, circularity in coffee packaging is not just a sustainability imperative. It is a strategic opportunity to redesign systems that benefit producers, consumers, and the planet. From flexible packaging innovations and reusable cup models to hermetic liners and compostable pods, the coffee sector is actively experimenting with solutions that preserve product quality while reducing environmental impacts. Yet, scaling these innovations requires overcoming technical, logistical, and regulatory hurdles, especially in aligning with frameworks like the EU Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation and the EU DR, so EU Deforestation Regulation, that we might discuss in another session. The path forward calls for collaboration across the entire value chain in the coffee sector, credible metrics to validate environmental claims, and thoughtful design choices that balance recyclability and economic feasibility. Whether you're a roaster, an exporter, an entrepreneur, or policymaker, the insights shared today offer tangible strategies to begin or deepen your journey towards circular packaging. As we look ahead, the Center for Circular Economy in Coffee, I'll stop here. I have a last question to each of the panelists. Very quick one, very one shot. Eileen, PPWR and circular economy for coffee. Is it a barrier or an opportunity? Just 10 seconds, 20 seconds.
I always go for an opportunity because I think compliance is the baseline and how we perform can really make us grow.
Thank you. Hanuman.
I think it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity.
This is not your question. Now is your question. I didn't mention ahead, one question per person.
Okay.
Hanuman, EcoTact.
Okay.
What do you tell to companies in the global south, specifically farmers and exporters? Do you pack and ship to Europe, or do you ship to Europe and pack in Europe?
Well, it has to be a combination of both, and a lot of it now depends on the tariff. Now the way tariffs are going, so we really don't know what we are looking at in near future ahead. Whether there will be easier borders across the world, or there will be high tariff barriers across the world. So that is something that we will see in near future. But I think movement across. But yes, across the globe, I think there has to be a common thread pertaining to resolve to fight, and act on circularity. I think this is what also all the conversation has been, and I think this is a wonderful opportunity to do so.
Graham, I have one question for you. What do you tell to manufacturers in packaging and people in the circular economy in the global south? Collaborate and compete, or work in catimini and show up when you have something ready?
It's definitely collaborate and compete. You have advantages in terms of cheap labor and low energy.
And my follow-up question, which is, you're the only one having 2 questions. You're very lucky today. The follow-up question is, what weather is it today? And what will be the weather in 2030 if you have a crystal ball?
Next question.
Is it raining? Is there a storm, or is it an earthquake approach?
I hope that it'll be soft rain and not heavy rain, but it's going to be difficult to meet the 2030 targets. They are very challenging, very stretching, and it requires the collaboration of the whole value chain to make that happen.
Thank you very much. I will give the last word to Toso, and I will not forget also the collaborators on this. But I think Dario is going to make a wonderful job on that. Please, Dario.
On the weather.
If you can influence, yes.
I hope to don't use the umbrella in 2030. So that's my guess, and to be prepared.
Okay. Would you like to make the closing remarks, Dario?
No, I would like just to, beside these jokes, I would like to thank you all the panelists and all the people who attend this panel. I think it's a very critical moment for packaging and circular packaging, especially in Europe, but not only Europe. And I would like to use these kind of events to inspire and to inform people that are facing challenges every day. So thank you.